But before venturing further down this enormous tower, I felt compelled, just briefly, to investigate the other end of the corridor. Here I opened a heavy door and gained access to a beautifully decorated stone lift. Uncanny rays of light flickered in the otherwise empty air. Esoteric sorcery seemed to be afoot here. Just like in the tower near Castle Stormvale, the impressive lift went up for the longest time, and upon reaching its destination, I was hard-pressed to acknowledge what I had dismissed not long ago. It was indeed a cauldron of staggering proportions on the top of those great mountains. I couldn't dispute that anymore. But what was this? That faraway hellhole below me seemed terribly familiar, and then I realized I had been there, how insignificant it looked. Once again puzzled by this outlandish world, I shook my head and continued up the stairs. But of course, more of those stiffened and hairy fingers so passionately loved by the loathsome grannies. Contemplating just how lewd their late-night meetings most likely were, I found a use for that great rune left to me by the general. From here, it went sour. My journey down into the depths of this strange building became quite tiresome. What? How was he still alive? Dying on more than one occasion, and realizing how gravity remained the one force in this universe never to be trifled with, I began an education in laughable acrobatics. If anyone had seen me, I would have been the laughingstock for as long as I lived. Seriously. I was not made for this. My descent into the darkness below even had moments of uncomfortable awkwardness. All the way down, at the very bottom of this god-forsaken tower, I encountered an apparently devious guard. Considering the number of observable bloodstains, one could only assume that he would be lethal as well as intimidating. That was not the case. Turned out, he was just another peasant parading as somebody of importance. Please, no more. His vulgar attempt at radiating masculinity was embarrassing to witness. Generously dealing crushing pain to that man in demeanor only, I killed him with no great effort. Now for the amusing part. I entered the mist and reached a well-lit, ancient chamber, most likely used for occult ceremonies. I was greeted by black flames hurled in my general direction. The culprit responsible was a quaint, tall fellow wearing a strange, bright and sickly-looking robe. Wait a moment. Was he wearing the skin of others? That was repulsive. As if that wasn't bad enough, that damn thing also began swirling around with its disgusting twin blade, slicing me instantaneously. Yes, I see you boasting, and it's sickening. Hoping to achieve some sort of success, I tried out another of those precious and rarely used weapons in my possession. To no avail, of course. I even took out the great shield which had protected me from so much harm during my travels. Suffice to say, it did not work out as intended. Finally, I tried two-handing my trusty mace once more, entertaining the possibility that I had just been a bit out of shape. Oh, give it a rest, will you? And then, a voice from my past whispered to me as a long-forgotten memory surfaced.
And I will fight at your side.
In that instant, I knew what that finely crafted bell found near the murderous night was for. Running past the guard for the 50th time and entering the mist, I felt hope rise. I was sure I had discovered a glorious weapon. I rang the bell, and the Albinoric appeared out of nowhere. By the gods, she was impressive. My new and brightly glowing companion began piercing the off-putting fellow with skin issues. Naturally, he discovered it. and threw his black flames at her, apparently not realizing that she was a strong spirit, far beyond his vile reach. All of a sudden, though, he was all over me. Wait, where was she? I had been betrayed. Left on my own again, and desperately trying to survive his lack of boundaries, I considered how summoning that noble archer had gone so wrong. Surely, it had been an unfortunate and unlucky chain of events that had taken her down. As he killed me, I convinced myself to give her another chance. This time, as I summoned her, he went straight for me instead. Now she had a fair chance of doing some harm, actually lending a hand in this bothersome battle. I shouted for help, but she just sat there, firing arrows at him that seemed no more harmful than mean-spirited words. This really was as anticlimactic as it could get. Getting angrier by the minute, I felt disappointment pierce me, not unlike how the so-called warrior's arrows were supposed to work. In my misery, I remembered another spirit gifted to me long ago and thought, why not? Lo and behold, a big old jellyfish appeared. What could that soft and spineless thing even do? Trying to fight alongside that squishy creature, the answer became evident. Next to nothing. At my wit's end, and deciding to try my luck with the last spirit I owned, I called forth a pack of angry wolves. They should do the trick, shouldn't they? They did not. I realized how pathetic those summoned creatures were. They had proven themselves worthy as nothing more than toys. I resorted to the animalistic way of shredding, equipped the deliciously filthy claws, and uttered the terrible blood oath. Jumping nimbly past the goon with skills attained through untold failures, I entered the mist for the last time. There he was, that sickly fellow, morbidly wearing the skin of others, and I tore into him with a fury fueled by anger and a need for vengeance. I dodged his attack, once, twice, but was rudely interrupted by that ridiculous move. Lowering his beardless face and making the grey hood of skin seem like another face altogether, he crossed his arms and exploded. He had no idea how atrocious he looked, not even a clue. Now it was time for the usual tricks, stretching that abhorrent body of his in horrific ways, making a mockery of life itself. Seeing him create waves of black flames, I realized he would never enjoy the company of any maiden with that ghoulish attire. The stench was almost unbearable, yet I kept at it, and felt the futile resistance of his bones as I punctured him. Did I even remember a time before entering this space of sweat, fire, and blood? I couldn't tell, because I went to another place entirely, losing myself in the heat of the struggle. Putting the claws to good use and piercing the dried layers of skin, he was burned, and I laughed while listening to the sound of sizzling flesh. Sadly, though, my own limbs were also burning now. Finally, upon annihilating that abomination, an explosion of energy was released in this remote chamber, deep beneath the Tower of Caelid. He had left me something revolting, his robe and hood composed of patches of skin. What was I supposed to do with that? Gleefully, I shouted to the henchman forbidden to enter his master's domain, "Go find another monstrosity to worship, you sick cultist." I could now study the large and ceremonial chamber, where I had spent hours dancing with that tall pervert, and noticed a chest in the far end. Expecting something hideous, seeing how off-putting that fellow had been, I was pleasantly surprised to discover a finely wrought great sword instead. It was a wonder to behold, but trying to wield the beautiful weapon did me no good. Even if dark powers lay dormant within it, something was clearly holding me back, and I didn't have faith in my ability to decipher its secrets. I had bested the profanity made flesh, rejoiced at the thought of never having to look at that stomach-turning obscenity again, and took my leave. Materializing in that putrid wasteland once more, I took one last look at the dark tower, scoffed and summoned torrent. I finally rode west again, and despite the heavy rain doing its best to drench me with sorrow, it couldn't quench my spirit. Because I was once and for all done with this region of rot and regret. Reaching the grassy hills of Limgrave at dawn, I saw it. The falling star had struck the earth, but it had also changed the landscape entirely. Floating high in the air were rocks as large as cottages. They just hovered there, which in turn meant another thing. The ground beneath them had been shattered. Ranni's perfume-loving servant had been right after all. Damn it.